Good day everyone. We are the group 4 and we will be discussing about the physiology of the great vessels. So in this video, we're going to look at the physiology of the vascular part of the cardiovascular, the blood vessels, and the blood itself. So in this lecture, we examine the physiology of the large blood vessels, which are the aorta, the pulmonary artery, the pulmonary vein, and the superior and inferior vena cava. We will study how these vessels control blood, regulate blood pressure, and control bleeding when the vessel is ruptured. We will also examine the composition of blood itself and the functions of each of its constituent parts, which are the plasma, white blood cells, and red blood cells. So in this video, ma-mention diri ang paano ang blood vessels mag-control sa blood, how they regulate blood pressure, o how they control bleeding when the vessel is ruptured. Tapos ma-mention sab diri nga video ang composition sa blood ug ang function sa iyang parts, which are the plasma, white blood cells, and red blood cells. So, the anatomy of the blood. Did you know that the blood is an organ? Yes. An organ is a system of tissues of different kinds that works together to perform a specific function in the body. So, nasulod ang blood sa ana nga definition. So, makonsider ang blood nga organ. So, the human body contains 5 to 6 liters or 1.5 gallons of blood, constituting some 8.9% of total body weight. So, if nakatry na mo og carry og 1.5 gallon sa tubig, ing ana ka heavy ang blood sa isa ka person. So, di po ninyo maingon nga ang 8.9% nga total body weight kay gamay lang, kay heavy na siya guys, daghan og blood sa ato ang body. So the blood separates into 3 layers after centrifugation. The densest, the bottom layer, is made up of red blood cells or erythrocytes, about 45% by volume. The lightest layer, the top, is the plasma, which is about 55 layers by volume. The middle density is the white blood cells or the leukocytes or the buffy coat, which is about 1% by volume. So, later on, madiscuss na siya further karing layers sa blood. So, to continue, a hemoglobin reading measures the amount of the hemoglobin molecule in the blood. So, what is hemoglobin? Hemoglobin is a protein inside the red blood cells that carries oxygen from the lungs to the tissues and organs in the body and carry carbon dioxide back to the lungs. So, ang hemoglobin kay nana siya sa inside sa red blood cells nga mao na siya ang ga-carry sa oxygen from the lungs to the body o sa atong organs and pabalik na pud sa lungs nga nag-carry og carbon dioxide. So, hematocrit is the percent by volume of red blood cells. So, hematocrit ang tawag sa percentage by volume sa red blood cells sa atong body. So, the next slide is plasma. The liquid part is made up of the following. So, nganong liquidy man ang plasma? Because it contains clotting proteins, antibodies that fight off infections, electrolytes, which consist of sodium, potassium, and chloride, and water. So, sa composition pa lang nga water, liquidy na dyan na siya. So, the next slide will be discussed by the next reporter.
Transportation. The blood transports oxygen to all the body's tissue. It removes carbon dioxide from tissues. Nutrients from the GI tract are absorbed into blood. Blood removes waste from the cells for excretion. Blood circulates hormones and other chemicals from sites of manufacture to target organs. Ang ating dugo ay nagta-travel ng oxygen patungo sa ating body tissues. Then ito ay nagtatanggal ng carbon dioxide galing sa tissue. At ang mga nutrients na galing sa GI tract ay gina-absorb siya padto sa blood. Then pagkauman, blood is nagatanggal siya, siya ang nagatanggal og mga hugaw nga gikan sa atuang cells para sa excretion. Then ang blood kay naga-circulate siya og hormone og mga iba nga chemicals gikan sa sites sa atong manufacture hantod sa target nga organs. Mao na siya ang transportation. Then sa protection is the blood stop bleeding, fights infection, and transport cells and antibodies of the immune system to fight foreign invaders. Ang atong dugo kay siya ang nagalaban sa mga infections, siya nagaprotect, siya ang nagatransport o mga cells o mga antibodies sa atong immune system para maprotektahan niya ang atong foreign invaders. Mao na siya ang protection sa blood. Homeostasis. The blood maintains the equilibrium of the internal milieu. The body has a very narrow range of acceptable internal conditions. It maintains pH or acid-base equilibrium between 7.1 and 7.4. It regulates temperature through shunting mechanisms. Alcohol opens capillary sphincters, especially in the skin, which returns warm blood to the skin in cold condition. Although this feels pleasant, it draws heat away from the body's core and can result in death. It regulates total fluid and electrolyte balance.
So next is blood composition.
Plasma. What is a plasma in blood? Plasma is the liquid portion of blood. About 55% of our blood is plasma, and the remaining 45% are blood cells. White blood cells and platelets that are suspended in the plasma. Plasma is about 92% water. The term buffy coat might make you think of a shiny car wax, but in the world of blood banking, buff coat refers to the white layer between the red blood cells, and plasma is a unit of whole blood after it has been spun down in a centrifuge. The buff coat contains white blood cells, the soldiers of the immune system. Red blood cells, also referred to as red blood cell corpuscle, hematids, erythrocytes, are the most common type of blood cells and the vibrates principal means of delivering oxygen to the body tissues via blood flow through the circulatory system.
So, good day everyone. I am Sunshine Pardo Valdez and my report is all about erythrocytes. So, erythrocytes or red blood cells captured oxygen, the hemoglobin molecule. So, release it to cells and captured carbon dioxide for disposal. So, these hemoglobin molecules is rich in protein, or it consists protein and also consisting oxygen. Um, the function of this is to transport oxygen from the lungs to tissues and transport carbon dioxide from the tissues to the lungs. So it was said here that this hemoglobin molecule helps our body to dispose this carbon dioxide. Um, and also, this hemoglobin helps our body or us to transport this oxygen throughout our body. So erythrocytes are big concave discs which maximize gas exchange ability while minimizing size. So only immature erythrocytes have nuclei. So patients with anemia will have too many erythrocytes with nuclei. So people that have lower number of this red blood cell or erythrocytes is prone into this called anemia. So each red blood cell contains about 300 million hemoglobin molecules, which are iron-based and have a very high affinity for oxygen. So as what I have said, that this hemoglobin consists a oxygen, so that this hemoglobin transports oxygen throughout our body or to our tissues. So oxygen release and carbon dioxide captured are pH based. So hemoglobin's affinity for carbon monoxide or CO is 200 times greater than for oxygen. So This CO, when CO or carbon monoxide binds to hemoglobin, it may less the oxygen gets transported to body tissues and vital organs such as the brain and heart. So, um, this carbon monoxide can replace oxygen in the blood and can cause death. So, yes, of course, this can cause death because um, when this poisonous thing will bond into our oxygen, of course, it may lessen the oxygen of our body. So, CO builds up in our blood, bloodstream. When it's too much carbon monoxide in our air, our body replaces the oxygen in our red blood cells with carbon monoxide. So, of course, it may really cause that serious or some diseases we may get through this carbon monoxide. So although there are therapy in this case, which is the hyperbaric oxygen therapy, it involves breathing pure oxygen in a chamber which the air pressure is about 2 to 3 times higher than normal. So this speeds the replacement of carbon monoxide with oxygen in our blood. So this is just my research that there are therapy for this type of uh, disease or this type of thing when this carbon monoxide will bond into the oxygen because this is so serious to us as a human, of course, so that we must be aware what we must do if we have this uh, type of disease or illness that may affect our life. So, carbon monoxide poisoning can be treated by having the patients breathe 100% oxygen to replace the carbon monoxide to oxygen. So, as what I have said, this that there are a therapy for this or treatment to avoid this thing to happen, so that uh, it is a must to us to research more on how to prevent this thing to us.
So, the leukocytes, or the white blood cells. There are many different kinds of leukocytes with different functions. The hematopoietic stem cell is the origin of all leukocytes. A stem cell is a cell that can turn into any type of cell when directed by chemical signals during embryonic development. So, naa daw different kinds of leukocytes. Tapos kaning hematopoietic stem cell kay mao ni siya ang origin sa tanan nga leukocytes. So, let's find out kung unsa to ang mga different kinds sa leukocytes. So, first one is the eosinophils, which are involved in allergy responses. Second is the neutrophils, which are the main bacteria fighting elements and have different possible nuclear shapes. Third is the basophils, which are involved in allergy processes. Kung ang eosinophils kay sa allergy responses, ang basophils naman kay sa allergy processes. Fourth is the monocytes, which are wandering macrophages that travels the body eating dead cells and waste. So, ang monocytes, mao na siya ang ga-eat or ga-remove sa dead cells and waste. So, next, The fifth one is the lymphocytes, which plays an important role in the immune system. And the last one is megakardioblasts. Megakardioblasts became megakaryocytes, which break up into platelets. So, multo siya ang kinds of leukocytes. Leukocytes alert the body to stranger danger and release lysins and perforins, which destroy foreign cells. So, ga-release di ay ang leukocytes o lysins o perforins para ma-destroy tong mga unwanted or strange cells sa atong body. They can move out of blood vessels and attack danger in tissues as well. Leukocytes that leave the blood cannot re-enter it. They also keep the blood sterile. Leukocytes that leave the blood cannot re-enter it. So, katong mga leukocytes di ay nga nakahawa na sa blood, kay di na sila pwede magbalik dito. Kay marag, nag-fight naman sila infections, so di na sila pwede magbalik sa blood. They also keep the blood sterile. Bacteria in the blood or bacteremia is very serious, as is viremia or the viruses in the blood. Most life-threatening is the septicemia, which are organisms multiplying in the blood. So next is platelets and the homeostasis mechanisms. Platelets are the first line of defense in the blood's complicated clotting system. But first, what is the platelet? The platelets in the blood, or the thrombocytes are small, colorless cell fragments in our blood that form clots and stop or prevent bleeding. So, kanilang mga platelets, sila ang in charge sa pag-heal or pag-stop or pag-prevent sa bleeding sa ato body. So, in the process known as chemotaxis, chemical signals attract platelets to a trauma site. They aggregate and form a barrier to blood flow. So, sa process ng chemotaxis di ay, kaning chemical signals nag-attract sila sa platelets paadto sa trauma site or sa samad. Tapos, kaning mga platelets kay mag-aggregate na yun sila para mag-form sa barrier para mag-stop ang blood flow. Next, platelet plug formation. Platelets become sticky and adhere to the torn vessels at the site of bleeding. So, katong mga na-attract na sa chemical signals nga platelets, mahimot to silang sticky, tapos modikit sila dito sa torn nga vessels, katong na ay bleeding nga vessels. Then, the platelets release chemicals. There is a further spasm of smooth muscle and more narrowing of the hole. Tapos, katong mga sticky nga nakadikit na nga mga platelets, mag-release pa to sila sig chemicals para mahimong mas gamay na ang narrow. So, nag-start na ang ang barrier, ang clotting. Next is sticky platelets call for more platelets until a plug is formed. So, katong mga nakadikit na nga platelets, mag-call pa sila sa more nga platelets, manawag pa sila more platelets hangtod nga mapuno or mabuo tong plug. This is only the first step. The platelets is the paramedic of the bloodstream. So, kato di ay first step pa lang to siya. Tapos, ang ingon din nga ang platelets, kay ang paramedic daw sa bloodstream. Syempre, kay unsa man di ang ginabuhat sa paramedic, di ba? Tabang man sila sa mga na-injured. The clotting cascade is complicated to prevent blood from clotting inside healthy blood vessels. So, kada din clotting cascade, mo na siya tong kunyari magkugang imong samad. Katong puti good nga murag sticky kato, mo to siya ang prevent sa mga sa mga blood clots nga maghalo sa mga healthy vessels. So, mo to siya tong clotting cascade. Next, disseminated intravascular clotting is a disease in which blood clots inside healthy vessels. So, kaning disseminated intravascular clotting kay disease ni siya kung katong mga blood clots kay naghalo na sa mga healthy vessels. Because all the clotting factors is used up, patient will paradoxically have widespread bleeding. So, kay ang mga clotting factors daw kay nahurot na ay tendency nga magka-widespread bleeding ang pasyente. So, hemophilia is a disease in which the patient lacks a clotting factor. So, naay uban na tao nga naay hemophilia kani sila if kung masamad sila kay dugay kaayo kuan ilang platelets, wala sila karang gamay lang ilang clotting platforms. Ang tendency is maggrabe kayo ang flow sa ilang dugo, dugay kayo ma-plug, walay barrier nga mag-stop din silang dugo. So, mo ni sila na sila severe blood loss permi kung masamad sila, ganun. Wounds will not clot initially but the patient can bleed to death later without treatment. Mo to siya sa hemophilia. Dili dayon maklat ang mga wounds. Thrombi or clots and emboli, clot moving in the blood, are unwanted clots that can cause death. Next is control blood pressure. The pacemaker system in the heart controls only the rate of blood. Cardiac output is varied by rate and stroke volume. Baroreceptors is in the carotid artery and aortic arc measure blood pressure. Baroreceptors report drops in blood pressure to the brain, which will take any measure necessary to increase pressure. So kaning baroreceptors di ay kay mao ni ang ga-measure sa blood pressure sa isa ka tao. Tapos kaning baroreceptors kay mag-report dayon siya sa atong utok, which atong utok is mag-move dayon. The need for brain blood flow will override almost any other signals. The brain does not care why pressure is low. It will act immediately to increase rate, stroke, volume, and so forth. Long-term solutions come later. Causes may be dehydration, bleeding, drugs are later problems. The brain can be fooled. Pressure on baroreceptors of the neck signals falsely high pressure. The brain responds to lower it, and fainting may follow. Paroxysmal atrial tachycardia causes the atrium to beat at 300 beats per minute. Pressure on the baroreceptor will cause the brain to send a signal to the heart to slow down. So, kaning baroreceptors di ay so pag need na sa brain og blood flow, it will override almost any other signals. Murag dili napansinon ang any other signals kay unahon niya tong brain. The brain does not care why pressure is low. It will act immediately to increase the rate, stroke, volume, and so forth. So, moto dili sa pansinon sa brain ang uban na causes para sa dehydration, bleeding, or drugs. So, unahon jud sa utok katong pag-increase sa rate, stroke, o volume. So, mao to siya sa controlled blood pressure. So, next is shock. What is shock? Shock is a state in which the body cannot maintain sufficient cardiac output to supply oxygen and nutrients to the cells and remove wastes. Shock is not synonymous with either stroke or emotional shock. So, kaniday nga shock nga sigutan nato dire, dili siya pareha sa shock nga nakuratan ka or katong shock nga sa stroke or heart stroke, dili siya kato. Shock di ay is a critical condition brought by a sudden drop in blood flow through the body. So, when a person is in shock, his or her organs are not getting enough blood or oxygen. So, pag ang person di ay kay maka-experience of shock, it means na naay sudden drop sa iyang blood flow sa lawas niya. So, maingana na siya because their organs are not getting enough blood or oxygen. So, unsa ang types sa mga shock? The first one is the hypovolemic shock. Hypovolemic shock involves a decrease in blood volume. This decrease can result from blood loss or from dehydration. So, ang example sa blood loss is result of trauma or GI bleeding. Sa na GI bleeding? Karang GI bleeding guys is gastrointestinal bleeding. So, ano na siya, sa atong digestive tract. Example ana is ulcer. Na kay severe ulcer na tendency na mag-vomit kag blood. So, mao na siya ang GI bleeding. Next is dehydration, result from diarrhea, vomiting, lower fluid intake, or excessive sweating. So, the next shock is the endotoxic shock. Endotoxic shock results from infection with certain organisms, especially from gram-negative bacteria. So, ang endotoxic shock di ay kay gikan siya sa mga infections, especially gram-negative bacteria. So, ano ng gram-negative bacteria? Gram-negative bacteria are bacteria that do not retain the crystal violet stain used in the gram staining method of bacterial differentiation. So, pag kuan na sila under microscope, guys, like gina study gud nila ang usa ka liquid kay makita man 'di ba sa microscope na sila gina butang nga liquid nga violet liquid. So, mao to siya ang crystal violet stain. Kaning mga gram-negative bacteria daw, kay mauning bacteria nga dili ma-retain or dili makita sa katong crystal violet stains. So, the next and the third shock is the cardiogenic shock. What is the cardiogenic shock? Cardiogenic shock results from malfunction of the heart. From the word cardio, nakakonect siya sa heart, either a non-fatal heart attack or arrhythmia. So, mahitabo ning cardiogenic shock if your heart cannot pump enough blood and oxygen to the brain and other vital parts. So, mao to, dili gyapon enough ang blood sa isa ka organ maong maka-experience og cardiogenic shock. So, nagkuan na siya og either non-fatal heart attack, karang dili makakause sa death nga heart attack, or arrhythmia. Karang arrhythmia is an irregular heartbeat sa atong heart. The fourth and the last shock is the neurogenic shock. Neurogenic shock is a result of the brain trying to shut itself down. For example, as a result of a sudden unwanted visual image. So, from the word neuro means connect sa atong brain. So, mahitabo ni siya pag ang brain daw is trying to shut itself down. So, na may mga scenarios, guys, no, nga kanang murag nagot yung makita nga something awful or dili makaya sa atong sistema nga makuyapan ta. So, mao na siya ang neurogenic shock. Nakakonect siya sa atong utok. Next is the stages of shock. So, napo din siya stages, katong mga types of shock, na siya stages. So, the stage 1 is compensated non-progressive shock in which there's no cell death or permanent damage. This stage, which occurs after mild blood loss, is typified by transient fainting. Body responses are totally adequate. So, sa kaninga stage, walay cells na namatay o walay permanent damage. This stage occurs after mild blood loss. So, namay minsan na masamad ta no. Tapos, marag, feeling na to daghan na jud kaayo. So, may tendency na makuyapan ta na. Pero, there is stage 1, body responses are totally adequate. So, katong blood loss nga na kuan sa tong body is pwede pa to siya mapulihan, kaya pa yun sa atong body. So, the next stage is decompensated progressive shock. Stage 2 is decompensated. So, the next stage or stage 2 is decompensated progressive shock in which cells are injured. It results from more severe blood loss, which is about 25% of blood volume, or severe dehydration. It cannot be reversed without outside help. So, the stage sa stage 2, na injured na ang mga cells ug naa nay severe blood loss. Ang severe blood loss kay mag-consist siya og about 25% of blood volume. So, nasa diri kaya severe dehydration. So, it cannot be reversed without outside help. Kung sa stage 1, kaya pa sa atong body nga i-heal ang iyang sarili, sa stage 2, dili na pwede. Dili na kaya sa body. Kay na-injured naman ang mga cells, tapos naman na may severe blood loss. So, kailangan na siya iadto sa ospital. Kailangan na siya og outside help. Kailangan nag-assistance sa atong body. So the next and last stage is stage 3. Stage 3 is irreversible shock. The organs are damaged, the blood becomes acidic, and death usually occurs within hours. No treatment is possible. So sa stage 3 is the end na siya sa body sa isa ka person. Organs damaged, blood acidic na, og death kay murag gahulat na lang siya. Karang gamay na lang iyahang life because sa too much damage. Grabe na kayo ang damage sa body. No treatment is possible. Dili na siya makaya biskan mag-assist pa sa pag-heal sa atong body.
So, additional information. Did you know that our pulmonary artery has three layers? These three layers are the intima, media, and adventitia. The pulmonary artery are the part of the pulmonary circulation and plays a critical role in oxygenating blood and removing carbon dioxide. The three layers are the first one is the intima, a smooth inner layer, media, and a middle layer that pushes blood through, and adventitia, a protective layer. So that's all for our report. Thank you for listening and goodbye.